All right, we're going to do it. We're going to have an interesting, dispassionate, hopefully provocative conversation about the ethics of abortion. Completely non-controversial topic. And before we jump into this conversation, I want to have a conversation about our conversation about abortion, a meta-conversation, because the philosopher Louis Vaughan characterizes our conversations about abortion this way. He says, discussions of abortion are intensely emotional and usually accompanied by uncritical or dogmatic thinking. He says further, uncritical acceptance of particular moral perspectives on abortion seems to be the norm for people on all sides of the debate. Now, there's a couple of things that are interesting to me about this characterization by Vaughan. One is that he characterizes these conversations about abortion as intensely emotional. And I think he's right about that. When I look at people having very passionate arguments about the ethics of political violence or the ethics of artificial intelligence, I see people getting emotional, but I don't see them getting as intensely emotional as I oftentimes see people getting when they have conversations about abortion. So these conversations about abortion seem to be unique for their intense emotional quality. And of course, what Vaughan says here makes total sense. The more intense the emotions are that are motivating us, the less critically we're going to be thinking about the positions that we're advocating or the positions that we're rejecting, and instead just kind of fall back on our dogmas, on our already set in stone kinds of beliefs about things, and we're not going to critically evaluate our position to see if it's still the position that we should hold in light of the challenges that are being made to it, and we're probably not going to critically evaluate the positions that we're rejecting because our emotions cause them to simply dismiss those positions outright. Now, the other thing that's interesting to me about what Vaughan says here is that this is a characterization that applies to people on all sides of the debate. And it seems to me that upon hearing that some folks are going to say, no, that's not true from my side. My side has this one figured out. We've thought about this critically, and we've got the right position. It's those folks that are totally emotional and just relying on their uncritical thinking and their dogmas. But I think if we look at some evidence, that we'd see that Vaughan is probably right in this characterization applying to both sides. So you can see this cartoon here titled Liberal Compassion at 36 Weeks. So this is sort of making a statement on the ethics of abortion from a more conservative point of view and providing this caricature of somebody who is a supporter of abortion rights, but pro-choice. And so you see here, it's this woman, and she's got her shirt on that says third trimester with an arrow pointing down to her midsection. And she says, "How dare you challenge my right to kill this thing? No one can stop me from doing whatever I want with my body." And so you can see here this sort of characterization of this person as being sort of icy cold. And from the other perspective, you can see a caricature of those who might fall into the pro-choice camp, right? So here's a cartoon of former presidential candidate John McCain, who ran as a Republican, as a conservative, and he's looking at this body of a dead person, presumably a woman who's died from a botched abortion. And he says, who, her? She was just one of those pro-abortion extremists who wanted an exception to protect her so-called health. You can really see this kind of demonizing of the conservative position on this. And then here's one of my favorites. So you have this woman here who's got her megaphone that she's screaming at this other woman who's, again, got the shirt that says baby pointed at her midsection. So this person is screaming all kinds of expletives. She's obviously at a rally because she's carrying her sign that says it's a choice, not a child. And she's got her camera wrapped around here indicating that she's really just here at this rally for the fun and the kicks, not because she believes very seriously in what she's advocating for. She's got her National Abortion Rights Action League pin on. And then you can see this thought bubble coming out of this woman's body, presumably the fetus, the baby, saying, "A million terrorists in the world, and this lady wants to kill me." And then finally, you can see in these two panels here, you've got this woman here who's gestating a fetus, baby, and these very concerned people out here saying to this fetus baby, "We'll do whatever we can to protect your life. We're so concerned about you being that's in the womb here." But then the baby's born, and boy, look at the attitude change here. Now they're these screaming, angry lunatics saying, "Now you're on your own. Get a job, moocher. I hope your tramp mom doesn't want food stamps to feed you or medical insurance." Right? So this is what Vaughan's talking about, that we tend to talk about the quote-unquote other side in this debate in really nasty terms. And we can sort of understand why, because we have boiled down our positions, our quote-unquote arguments, about abortion to essentially bumper stickers and slogans, right? So you get these very short, these very terse explanations of positions that cause people on both sides to entrench themselves even further in their own positions and entrench themselves even further in their opposition to the other side, because they're being kind of assaulted with these bumper sticker slogans that can have the effect of demonizing the opposition in this discussion. And how can you have a fruitful, productive discussion with somebody who you believe is either exceptionally ignorant or evil or just completely emotionally driven? And the answer is you can't. So it does raise a question for us. Why is abortion such a tripwire issue? Why is this an issue that tends to set people off and not other issues like genetic engineering, even though we might be really passionate about genetic engineering and all of the ethical issues surrounding that? Why is it abortion that sets us off into such an emotional state that's so much more significant than we get set off into when we explore the issues of genetic engineering? And I would suggest to you that part of the reason is this, is that regardless of where you're at on the abortion issue, you probably see a lot at stake in this issue. There's a lot that matters intensely in this discussion that hits very deep at some of your core values. And when you hear those opposing points of view, you're hearing something that's cutting very close to what you really value, and you want to protect that thing, right? So if you're on a pro-life, if you're more pro-life oriented, you think that abortion involves the murder of a human being, right? Regardless of whether you accept that position, what's important to recognize is that somebody who is pro-life sees abortion as essentially murder. And of course we object to murder. All decent people object to murder, okay? On the other side, think about those who hold a pro-choice position and reflect back on all that we talked about in our discussion of ethical libertarianism and how much we rejected that idea of others having the ability to coerce our bodies and to do things to them or use them in ways that we didn't consent to, in ways that we don't consent to and that we don't want to. Those kinds of issues really, again, struck very deep at our sense of self and our sense of self-ownership and bodily autonomy, okay? So there's a lot at stake in this abortion issue, for sure. But we've got to figure out a way to be able to talk critically, rationally, dispassionately about this topic so that we can figure out not only what we should think about with regards to abortion, but what those who think differently from us might actually have in common with us. So, for example, I think everybody, regardless of their position on abortion, probably agrees that it's immoral to kill a newborn human. Most people would find it morally impermissible to go to a maternity ward and start killing babies who are in their incubators. I think everybody on all sides of this issue probably agrees with that. I think everybody on all sides of this issue probably also agrees that it's not immoral to abort a fetus or a baby if continuing the pregnancy threatens a woman's life. Okay? And polling data bears this out, that it's a very, very, very small percentage of the population that says even if continuing the pregnancy were to almost assuredly kill this woman, we think that she should be forced to. There's very few people that believe that. Most everybody agrees that if the pregnancy is somehow the thing that's causing the woman's life to be threatened, that abortion would be morally permissible, just like it's morally permissible to defend our lives from a threat, even if it requires us taking the life of another. I think everybody on all sides of this issue is going to agree that aborting a fetus or a baby at the 9th month of pregnancy for the sake of convenience starts to get a little morally sketchy. Most people are probably going to agree that technology probably shouldn't determine moral standing, because that gets really dicey, right? That if we start saying like, well, once a fetus is viable, then it has moral standing, but the moment before that viability, it's not viable, because that's going to push us into this weird position where we have to say that like, hey, if you're a fetus or a baby gestating in one country that's not very sophisticated technology, doesn't have very sophisticated technology, and you're not viable until the 8th month, you somehow have less moral significance than this baby fetus that's gestating in this highly sophisticated technological country that's able to make a fetus baby viable at 3 months, let's say. Okay, so that the technology is probably not something that we're going to disagree on. And we're probably also going to agree that we all want to do what's moral, right? No matter what we think of our opponents, one thing we should probably accept is that unless we have good reason for believing otherwise, we all want to do what the right thing to do is, okay? Now, if we don't have this discussion and we don't identify what things we have in common, we might not then be able to give fair consideration to aspects of this issue that really do deserve good critical analysis, like the value of a woman's right to bodily autonomy. Like, we need to be able to talk about that without getting overwhelmed by our emotions. We need to be able to talk about the moral considerability of a fetus. What exactly is the moral status of a fetus or a gestating baby? We need to be able to talk about that without getting so emotionally overwhelmed by our need to protect what we perceive as our rights. And we need to be able to talk about the genuine moral disgust that people on both sides of this issue sense. We need to be able to, even if we don't share the position of our ideological opponents, we need to be able to recognize that they're coming from some place that is very deep from within themselves and is rooted in values that are very important to them. All right, so now the question is, well, then how exactly are we going to have this conversation in order to achieve these ends? And that's what we'll pick up in the next video.